4 things that I didn't include in my contract as a healthcare provider that I so wish I did. So if you're going to be negotiating a contract with a healthcare organization this summer, whether you're graduating from residency or fellowship or nurse practitioner school, you're gonna wanna watch this video, especially if you're in an office-based setting, because these are things that I didn't include in my contract just because I didn't know, and I regret it every single day. The first thing is, especially if you're in an office-based setting, you're gonna want to include admin time in your schedule. That is like block time for you to call patients back, do peer-to-peers, like insurance authorizations, all of like the management of patients that are at home that you didn't see that day. I'm not even talking about like catching up on charting, because you will probably be backed up on charting, especially in the beginning, but there is so much behind the scenes stuff. So I am scheduled to work 8 hours. I'm usually seeing patients for about 7.5 to 8 of those 8 hours. So anything else has to either be done like on my lunch break before I get to clinic, or I have to stay late and do it. The second thing is, if you have a bonus that is either tied to RVUs like productivity or patient satisfaction scores, or any kind of like incentive bonus, make sure, one, that you know what those metrics are, make sure those metrics are actually attainable, and that the other providers that you're joining are actually like meeting those metrics consistently, and that people are actually getting that full bonus. So when I signed my contract, it said that there was like a 10% bonus based on patient satisfaction scores. So I took that at face value. I had no reason to suspect that I wouldn't get my full bonus, because, you know, I know the kind of provider I am, and didn't think that I would have poor patient satisfaction scores. So when it was time for my annual evaluation, we were talking about like the bonus I was going to be getting, it wasn't the full 10%, even though my patient satisfaction scores were perfect. It was because of some kind of stipulation that some of the providers that I work with are are contracted employees, some of the physicians. So that makes me ineligible for the program. It was kind of shady. Honestly, they should have just like let me know that in the beginning. And then I came to find out when I asked around that no one has ever gotten the full bonus in that office, and no one has like ever wondered why, which I thought was very strange. But so make sure you know what metrics they're looking at. Make sure you know who's collecting that data and where that data is stored. And like if you're going to be able to look at that either quarterly or whatever, so it's not a surprise at the end of the year, and make sure that the metrics are actually something that you're going to be able to achieve. The third thing that I didn't include is on-call pay, or what being on call is going to look like. So when I was hired, I was initially not supposed to take call, and I was only supposed to work the set days. So I'm part-time, so I'm only in clinic 3 days a week. However, as I'm getting a tiger text from the hospital that I work for right now, completely lost my train of thought. Third thing is on-call pay. So if you're going to be taking call, are you going to be compensated for, if it's, you know, the, I don't know, 12 hours that you're on call overnight? Are you just going to be paid out a lump sum regardless of like how many hours of work you're actually doing? Or are you going to be paid hourly? If you have to come in on a different like a day where you're scheduled to be off, what does that look like? Are you, again, going to just be paid hourly? So if you go into the hospital or your clinic to help out for, you know, see problem visits for 3 hours, are you only being paid for 3 hours, or are you going to be paid a bonus on top of that? So that was something I wasn't supposed to be taking call when I first joined the practice, and then there was a gap in the provider like coverage, so I ended up having to take some extra shifts and come in on days. I'm part-time, so I only work 3 days a week, so sometimes I have to go in for a 4th day. Now, when we talked about it, like when we knew that this was going to be happening and we talked about it, they had just said that they would convert whatever my salary was to hourly. So if I go in for 4 hours on a day that I'm off, I'm only paid for those 4 hours. Now, at first I wasn't being paid at all, so at least there I'm being compensated now. But it's not really taking into account that you are going in on your day off. you are like leaving your house, driving to the hospital or driving to the clinic, and whether or not, if you're just seeing one patient, that still is like disruptive to your day off. So you should definitely make sure that you have a bonus on top of, like, you know, whatever you're being paid to be there. All right, the fourth thing that I didn't include in my contract, and this probably was really stupid on my part, but the fourth thing that I didn't include was education. So I am paid out for like, I am reimbursed for education, but it's only up to a certain amount. Now, I am the only part-time provider in my office, so we do a lot of, me and the other providers, we do a lot of the same stuff. So we go to the same like conferences and things like that. And I, for whatever reason, my education reimbursement is prorated for me being part-time, which doesn't really make sense, because if everybody's doing the same thing, like, you should just be compensated for the same thing. Okay, so I know that I said that there's only 4 things that I would include, but now that I'm doing this video, I just thought of another thing. So I am hired to be in the clinic. However, every single day I have to also round in the hospital and round in the, I work in an oncology office, so I also have to round in the infusion room, so the infusion center. So again, this ties back to if you're like the admin time thing, just because a lot of times if I'm going to the hospital to round, it takes up to an hour depending on how many patients we have. And then, my God, I don't know why the hospital's like blowing up my phone right now. So sometimes that takes up to an hour to round on the patients that are admitted, or consults and things like that. And then infusion, a lot of times, there will be patients in infusion that we're not seeing in the clinic that I will have to manage and put orders in for and things like that. Again, that is all lumped in the same 8-hour schedule. So I go in usually around like 8, and I'm supposed to leave by like 4:30. Typically we are seeing patients, like, I have patients scheduled from 8:30 to 4. So I have to fit that clinic schedule in on top of the rounding and the infusion stuff, and then all of the admin stuff, and which is why I typically don't ever work 8 hours. It's usually at least 10. So, and then I think there was one more thing. This is probably just very unique to me. However, this was something that I didn't think about. So again, I was hired for 8-hour shifts. The other providers that I work with, not all of them, but most of them have a 10-hour schedule. However, we're like going in and leaving at the same time. So they end up doing less than 10 hours. I'm doing less than 8, and it just doesn't really make any sense. So make sure that if you're going to be working with providers, if you're hired for 8 hours, that you're, working out some kind of schedule where you're actually leaving in 8 hours and then somebody is carrying over, or if, you're staying late, like, I don't know. It just doesn't make any sense. And I don't know how, whatever. Anyways, that's it. Good luck.